The crystalline sensors of the V-Lorax observation vessel, the Axiom, hummed with a precision that mirrored the collective mind of its crew. Commander Xylos, his 6 multifaceted eyes reflecting the star-dusted holographic display, processed the incoming data stream. Their mission: catalog new biological lifeforms on designated Sector Gamma 7. Their current target, Viridia Prime, a verdant jewel of a world, promised to be a fascinating addition to the galactic database. The preliminary scans showed a planet teeming with complex ecosystems, rich in biodiversity. But one species, in particular, defied all logical classification. They called themselves humans. From a distance of 3 astronomical units, Xylos had observed them for cycles. They were bipeds, their forms soft, without the chitinous plates of the V-Lorax or the dense musculature of other known intelligent species. They possessed no innate energy manipulation, no natural weapons of note. Their most advanced technology, though rapidly progressing, was still rudimentary by galactic standards. Yet they thrived. They built sprawling settlements, farmed vast swaths of land, and even ventured into the planet's lower atmosphere in crude flying machines. By every known biological axiom, these humans should have been vulnerable, easy prey for the numerous apex predators that roamed Viridia Prime. Yet they were not. The first incident, recorded 3 solar cycles ago, had been dismissed as an anomaly. A pack of skitter hunters, renowned for their stealth and lethal neurotoxins, had converged on a human outpost nestled near the towering emerald forests. Xylos had watched, calculating the inevitable outcome when something shifted. The lead skitter hunter, mid-pounce, suddenly froze. Its multiple limbs locked, its chitinous plating began to shimmer with an unnatural iridescence. Within moments, the creature wasn't merely unmoving, it was transforming. Its organic structure rapidly converted, solidifying into a brittle, inert crystalline formation. The transformation spread, a swift, terrifying petrification, until the entire pack stood as lifeless, gleaming statues, their hunting snarls frozen in silent agony. The humans, oblivious, continued their activities, a few simply noting the sudden stillness of the forest. Xylos had reviewed the data countless times. The energy signatures were baffling. There was no external force, no discernible weapon, no biological reaction that could explain such a profound alteration of matter. It was as if the universe itself had corrected an error, neatly eliminating a threat without human intervention. His primary analyst, Subcommander Kalen, equally meticulous, presented similar findings on subsequent incidents. A massive sky serpent, its sonic shriek capable of rupturing internal organs, had attempted a dive-bomb attack on a human fishing vessel. Halfway through its descent, its internal vocal cords mutated, producing an impossible, dissonant screech that caused the creature to implode upon itself, collapsing into a dense, non-reactive dust. The fishing vessel remained untouched, its occupants merely complaining about a sudden, inexplicable gust of wind. These were not isolated incidents. In the 6 solar cycles Xylos had been observing Viridia Prime, 17 such events had been catalogued. Each time, a predatory creature or hostile flora that posed a significant threat to humans had been neutralized by an invisible, inexplicable force. The method varied: petrification, spontaneous combustion, molecular disintegration, even instances where the aggressor's own digestive system abruptly reversed, consuming itself. The common thread was undeniable: direct, immediate, and utterly devastating neutralization of the threat. And the humans, seemingly unaware of the cosmic guardians they possessed, continued their remarkably ordinary lives. This defiance of logical expectation gnawed at Xylos. The V-Lorax creed was built on universal principles, on the elegant predictability of cause and effect. Humans, it seemed, existed outside these sacred laws. The anomaly of Viridia Prime became an obsession for the crew of the Axiom. Xylos initiated deeper scans, deploying microprobes designed to analyze environmental energy fluctuations at a molecular level. His goal was to identify the source of this protective mechanism. Was it an unknown atmospheric phenomenon? A unique biological defense that only affected non-human organisms? Or perhaps, as some more speculative junior officers suggested, a higher dimensional entity? Xylos dismissed the latter as unscientific conjecture. Every phenomenon had a root cause, a logical sequence of events. He just hadn't found it yet. One probe, calibrated for biosignature analysis, was dispatched to hover discreetly over a human agricultural settlement. Its advanced sensors were designed to detect minute biochemical reactions, pheromone releases, or even subtle neural emissions. The probe maintained position for half a cycle, transmitting continuous data. It recorded human laughter, the rhythmic thrum of their farming machinery, the complex chemical exchanges of their digestive processes. Then, a minor incident. A native burrowing creature known for its sudden, aggressive emergence and sharp mandibles surfaced near a human child. Before the creature could strike, the probe's optical sensors registered a flash of light, imperceptible to the human eye. The burrowing creature, mid-lunge, simply stopped. Not frozen, not petrified, but utterly, completely inert. Its biological processes ceased, its molecules became perfectly still, like a snapshot of nothingness. The probe, designed to analyze such events, continued its data stream, but the data itself became corrupted. Initially, it was subtle. Readings that should have been positive became negative, then fluctuated wildly, defying mathematical probability. Chemical compositions reported impossible isotopes. Energy readings showed anti-energy signatures. Xylos, reviewing the stream on the main display, felt a cold knot form in his primary processing cluster. The probe wasn't just malfunctioning, it was feeding them illogical information. Subcommander Kalin recalibrated the receiving array, double-checked the Axiom's internal systems. All perfect. Yet the data worsened. What was once precise numerical data became a torrent of chaotic symbols, then gibberish. The probe itself, still broadcasting, sent images of impossible geometries, landscapes that folded in on themselves, and creatures that defied three-dimensional space. The V-Lorax, a species whose very existence was predicated on logical understanding, began to experience a profound unease. The effects weren't limited to the probe. The Axiom's internal chronometers began to drift. Temporal readings varied from bridge to mess hall. Crew members reported feeling moments of extreme slowness, then sudden bursts of inexplicable speed, as if their own internal clocks were out of sync with reality. Navigation systems, designed to plot courses with perfect accuracy, displayed routes that folded space into impossible configurations, suggesting jumps to locations that didn't exist or were millions of light-years away in an instant. The ship's nutrient replicators, a pillar of V-Lorax efficiency, started producing sustenance that was chemically perfect but tasted fundamentally wrong, causing waves of nausea among the crew. These were not mechanical failures. Diagnostic systems showed perfect functionality. It was as if the very rules of the universe within the Axiom were being subtly, imperceptibly, rewritten. Xylos called an emergency council with his senior officers. "This is beyond a mere biological anomaly," he stated, his vocalizer unit emitting a low, resonant hum. "The integrity of our data, our very perception of reality, is compromised. We are experiencing effects that defy universal constants." Kalin, her multifaceted eyes dull with exhaustion, nodded. "The probability matrices are collapsing, Commander. If we continue to collect data, our entire understanding of physics could unravel. It's like trying to calculate pi by dividing a non-existent number by 0. The Council was in agreement. Direct observation, even with probes, was causing their scientific principles to fray. The humans of Viridia Prime were not merely protected, they seemed to project an aura of anti-logic, an existential paradox. The decision was made. If passive observation and remote probing yielded only chaos, a more direct approach was deemed necessary. Not an attack, Xylos emphasized, but a controlled capture for study. "We will take a single specimen," he declared to his senior officers. "Transport it to a sterile, isolated lab environment. We will analyze its biology, its neural pathways. We must understand the source of this protection before it undermines our entire scientific framework." The V-Lorax, rigid in their adherence to scientific method, saw this as the only logical next step. Their very intellectual survival depended on it. A specialized capture team, comprised of 3 elite V-Lorax operatives, was dispatched in a stealth shuttle. They were equipped with non-lethal energy dampeners and containment fields designed to incapacitate and secure without causing permanent harm. Their target, a small human research outpost in a secluded mountainous region. The humans there were engrossed in geological surveys, their attention fixed on their instruments. The V-Lorax plan was meticulous. A swift, silent approach, activation of the dampeners, and extraction of one subject. The mission was executed flawlessly. The chosen human, a young female, slumped unconscious into the containment field. Within minutes, the stealth shuttle was accelerating back towards the Axiom. A tense silence filled the bridge as Xylos watched the containment unit being secured in the ship's primary research bay. Dr. Venn, the Axiom's chief xenobiologist, a V-Lorax whose entire career was dedicated to understanding life, began his preliminary scans. The human subject remained unconscious, suspended in a stasis field. Venn's instruments, which had performed perfectly for centuries, began to falter. The holographic display flickered, showing phantom errors. The diagnostic systems reported conflicting readings for the human's internal organs. One moment, her heart rhythm was stable. The next, it was registering as a series of impossibly complex, non-repeating mathematical equations. Her neural activity, instead of showing typical brainwave patterns, appeared as a swirling vortex of multidimensional energy signatures. "Commander, this is unprecedented," Dr. Venn reported, his typically calm voice tinged with agitation. "Her biological systems are fluctuating. I am registering impossible states of matter within her cellular structure, and her mind is not simply unconscious. It is vast and utterly illogical." As the hours passed, the inexplicable effects within the Axiom escalated. Lights in the corridors began to turn off and on at random, their hues shifting through colors unseen in the known spectrum. The ship's artificial gravity systems became erratic, causing objects and crew members to float momentarily before plummeting back to the deck with jarring force. Data conduits, vital for the V-Lorax's networked consciousness, began to feed back, creating disorienting loops of their own thoughts, fragments of forgotten calculations or phantom memories. Crew members reported profound disorientation, a sense of having their very reality subtly altered. Many complained of being unable to differentiate between their own thoughts and alien, impossible concepts. The more they tried to analyze the human, the more their own internal logic seemed to break down. One of the capture team members, designated Operative Cry, was found in his quarters, staring blankly at a wall. When approached, his multifaceted eyes focused on the approaching officer, but he did not respond. His limbs moved stiffly without purpose. His mind, when probed by a telepathic V-Lorax medic, was found to be a chaotic storm of meaningless data, his core logical processes shattered. He could no longer comprehend commands or even simple stimuli. He was, to all intents and purposes, a living, breathing automaton, his essence utterly withdrawn. It was as if his mind, in briefly touching the boundary of humanity's protection, had been profoundly overwritten. By the second cycle of the human's presence on board the Axiom, panic began to ripple through the ship. The disciplined V-Lorax crew, accustomed to order and predictability, found themselves in a spiraling descent into existential dread. 3 more officers, members of the capture and research teams, exhibited similar symptoms to Operative Cry. Their logical minds had become fractured, unable to process coherent thought. Their very identities, once defined by their meticulously ordered mental pathways, were dissolving into chaotic, nonsensical loops. The ship itself was on the verge of breakdown. Energy conduits glowed with unstable, fluctuating power. The environmental controls cycled erratically, plunging sections of the ship into Arctic cold, then scorching heat. Structural integrity alarms blared intermittently, despite engineering teams finding no physical damage to the hull. It was as if the Axiom was experiencing a conceptual collapse, not a mechanical one. "General Xylos," Subcommander Kalin reported, her voice strained, "we are losing control. Our logical processors are degrading. The universal constants within this vessel are no longer constant. The ship is becoming illogical." Xylos looked at the unconscious human on the medical bay's holoscreen. She lay perfectly still, seemingly untouched by the chaos she had unwittingly unleashed. The terror in Xylos's core was not of an external threat, but of the internal unraveling of his entire species' understanding. The universe, as they knew it, was being mocked. "Release the human," Xylos commanded, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Immediately. Return her to her precise location with no memory of this incident. Disengage all research protocols. Scrub all data related to the capture. We will act as if this never happened." Dr. Venn, though clearly suffering from the mental strain, nodded with a desperate urgency. "General, the shuttle's navigation systems are unstable. They are plotting courses to impossible dimensions. It might not return." "Then we will endure whatever it takes," Xylos stated, his eyes fixed on the image of the human. "This anomaly is not to be understood, it is to be avoided. Whatever force protects them, it is not bound by our physics, our logic, or our reality. We are the ones unraveling, not they." The remaining functional crew scrambled to prepare the stealth shuttle. It was an agonizing process. Navigation coordinates shifted on the fly, power couplings resisted activation, and the very concept of return seemed to ripple through layers of illogical spacetime. Finally, with a jolt that threatened to dislodge every V-Lorax from their seats, the shuttle detached from the Axiom and plunged towards Viridia Prime. As the shuttle made its descent, the bizarre phenomena on board the Axiom slowly began to recede. The lights stabilized, gravity returned to normal. The chaotic internal data streams of the V-Lorax minds began to resolve, though the lingering effects of the existential disruption would remain a deeply unsettling experience for years to come. When the shuttle reported successful deployment of the human subject back to her outpost, the last of the impossible glitches vanished. Xylos ordered the Axiom to retreat, not just from Viridia Prime, but from the entire sector. The mission logs would be heavily redacted. The incident would be classified at the highest level. The V-Lorax, a species that prided itself on its unyielding logic and scientific prowess, had encountered an enigma that threatened to dismantle their very conceptual foundations. They had learned a terrifying truth. Humans were not merely protected by an unknown force. They were protected by the very fabric of reality bending to their defense. And the consequences for those who sought to breach that defense were not mere physical defeat, but the shattering of one's own understanding of existence. As the Axiom jumped to FTL, leaving the verdant anomaly of Viridia Prime far behind, Xylos initiated a galaxy-wide alert, coded in the most secure V-Lorax encryption. The message was simple, stark, and chilling. "Warning. Sector Gamma 7, designation Viridia Prime, is a non-contact zone. Any direct interaction with the indigenous species, humans, is strictly forbidden." All scientific and military protocols regarding this species are to be cancelled. They are not to be harmed, observed, or even conceptually threatened. The consequences are not physical but existential. Humanity is off limits. No harm shall come to them. This was merely the beginning of the galactic community's terrifying education regarding the peculiar inhabitants of Viridia Prime. What unspeakable forces lie coiled around humanity? Will other species heed the V-Lorax warning, or will they too test the boundaries of an existence that defies all logic? What will happen when humans finally venture into a galaxy that already views them as an impossible paradox? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible HFY stories. The V-Lorax warning, broadcast on every known galactic frequency and relayed through secure diplomatic channels, spread like a cold void across the civilized cosmos. Sector Gamma 7, designation Viridia Prime, now bore the ominous label. Non-contact zone. Humanity off limits. Commander Xylos's chilling account of the Axiom's existential unraveling, stripped of all hyperbole, landed with the weight of a dying star on countless data slates. Most species, valuing their sanity and the immutable laws of physics, heeded the V-Lorax's desperate counsel. They marked Viridia Prime as a galactic exclusion zone, a blighted reality where fundamental constants warped and logic itself came to perish. Yet not all races were so easily swayed by the tremors of a single V-Lorax vessel. Greed, hubris, desperation, or an unyielding adherence to their own dogmatic principles drove others to test the boundaries of this impossible protection. The galaxy, it seemed, needed a more personal education. The first to disregard the V-Lorax edict were the Grask scavengers. Their massive, multi-jointed vessels, cobbled together from the wreckage of forgotten wars and derelict stations, were drawn to Viridia Prime not by scientific curiosity, but by rumor. Tales of an entire ecosystem of petrified predators, frozen mid-pounce into gleaming, inert statues, reached their avaricious ears. To the Grask, these were not warnings of cosmic absurdity, but mountains of untapped resources. Crystalline formations of unprecedented purity, dense biological material ripe for processing. It was a treasure trove beyond imagination. Their lead vessel, the Iron Maw, a hulking beast of scarred durasteel, dropped cautiously into Viridia Prime's orbit. Commander Throg, a Grask whose 6 eyes constantly scanned for profit, dismissed the V-Lorax warnings as superstitious fear. Petrified biologicals are just that, he rumbled to his crew, his voice resonating through the bridge. Solid matter. Dead matter. What impossible force can affect dead matter, eh? Landing zones were selected near the largest known concentrations of the petrified skitter hunters. Harvester teams, equipped with powerful plasma cutters and gravity lifts, descended to the planet's surface. The first crystallized creature was enormous, its once terrifying mandibles now gleaming like polished obsidian. As the plasma cutter engaged, its energy beam biting into the crystalline hide, a low, resonant hum began to emanate from the ground. It was imperceptible to the Grask's auditory sensors, but the very molecular bonds of the petrified creature began to vibrate. The plasma cutter, a tool designed to vaporize solid rock, suddenly lost its coherence. Its focused beam fractured into a chaotic spray of unfocused light, dancing wildly across the petrified creature without effect. Frustration mounted. Other teams experienced similar issues. Their drills shattered. Their gravity lifts sputtered, refusing to engage with the inert forms. It was as if the petrified creatures were actively resisting, not with force, but with an inherent, unyielding wrongness to the tools that sought to dislodge them. Then, the true consequences began to manifest. The Grask harvesters, whose ships were meticulously maintained conglomerations of recycled components, found their own vessels beginning to experience similar, impossible phenomena. Plates of their hull, once solid, began to shift at the molecular level, their atomic structures rearranging themselves into unstable, brittle forms, then back again. Their hyperdrives, scavenged from ancient warships, refused to engage, their internal mechanisms twisting into impossible geometries that defied mechanical repair. Supply containers in their cargo holds spontaneously converted their contents, nutrient paste, became unrefined ore, then back to nutrient paste, then into a swirling void that vanished seconds later. The iron Maw itself was afflicted. Commander Throg watched in horror as the very durasteel of his bridge plating began to take on the iridescence of the petrified skitter hunters below. His data slates, filled with calculations of profit, melted into pools of liquid metal, then solidified into useless, crystalline shards. The Grask, a species defined by their ability to repurpose and re-engineer, found their own technology turning against them, not with an explosion, but with a silent, fundamental breakdown of material integrity. They had sought to exploit the impossible, and the impossible had begun to devour their own material reality. Throg, a broken creature of avarice and fear, ordered a full retreat. The iron Maw, limping and groaning as its very structure warped and corrected itself, barely escaped Viridia Prime's gravitational pull. The Grask had learned a bitter lesson. The protection around humanity was not just biological. It extended to the very fabric of matter, ensuring that even inert remnants of a threat could not be exploited. Next came the Xylar psionics, a species of ethereal beings whose existence was entirely based on networked consciousness and psychic manipulation. They dismissed the V-Lorax and Grask failures as brute force or materialistic blunders. Their approach would be subtle, mental. They believed humanity's protection was a form of latent, perhaps unconscious psionic field, one that could be understood, channeled, or even absorbed. Prime Weaver Kyra, her luminous form shimmering with focused psychic energy, gathered her most powerful conduits. From the safety of their home world, light years away from Viridia Prime, they established a collective mind link. Their intent was not to harm, but to observe, to gently probe the human psyche, to understand the unique mental imprint that generated such an impenetrable shield. Kyra reached out, her consciousness flowing across the vast interstellar distances. She touched a human mind. It was a young human, a creative individual dreaming of impossible contraptions and fantastical worlds. The human felt nothing, their dream continuing undisturbed. But Kyra, and through her, the entire Xylar collective felt it. Not a protective barrier, not a defensive counterpulse, but an overwhelming, silent presence. It was not a mind, but an abyss of all minds. Not a thought, but a symphony of all thoughts, stretching back into primordial history and forward into an infinite, branching future. It was every human who had ever lived, was living, and would ever live, their collective consciousness, not merely echoing but existing simultaneously in that single point of contact. Kyra's mind recoiled, not from pain, but from an impossible saturation of concept. The sheer, unbounded humanity of it all. Then, without a word, without a directed pulse, the Xylar collective mind link began to unravel. It started subtly. Individual Xylar, connected through the Prime Weaver, began to lose their connection to the greater network. Their once fluid, shared thoughts became fragmented, isolated. They were still alive, still intelligent, but suddenly, terrifyingly alone in their own minds. This was an existential horror for the Xylar, a species for whom individuality was a foreign concept. The psychic shock spread like a disease through their networked society. Minds that had been harmoniously intertwined for millennia suddenly found themselves severed, screaming into the void of their own solitary existence. Prime Weaver Kyra herself was the most profoundly affected. Her luminous form flickered, then dimmed, her consciousness now a scattered, chaotic echo of disjointed sensory input. She could no longer form coherent thoughts, only experience a torrent of every human emotion, every human memory, every human dream, all at once, without context or meaning. She had attempted to connect to a single human mind, but had instead brushed against the unified, temporal collective of their entire species. The Xyler, a civilization built on the bedrock of shared consciousness, collapsed into a myriad of isolated, terrified beings. Their once intricate psychic networks imploded, leaving behind a fractured, silent society. They never attempted contact with humanity again. Their lesson was profound. The protection around humanity was not just physical or material. It was also existential, encompassing the very nature of their collective being across time, making any mental intrusion a violation of the grandest, most interconnected scale. The failures of the Grask and Xyler spread further warnings, but they also spawned a new, terrifying hypothesis among certain species. If humanity was protected across material and conceptual reality, perhaps the threat was not their strength, but their very existence. This faction, composed primarily of militaristic, expansionist empires and highly logical, order-obsessed collectives, began to view humanity as an anomaly that must be rectified for the greater galactic good. They feared that if this protection could influence reality on such a fundamental level, what would happen when humans finally gained the capability to wield it consciously? Their leader emerged from the shadows of galactic politics, grand strategist Valerius of the Cygnian Dominion. A being of pure, logical thought, Valerius saw humanity not as a threat to be fought, but a paradox to be erased. His species, the Cygnian, excelled in temporal manipulation, their entire civilization built on precision calculations of causality and countercausality. They believed that if the human protection originated from their future selves, then the solution was simple: eliminate their past. If the future protects the past, Valerius stated to his war council, his voice a calm, modulated hum, then sever the lineage. Target the source. Remove the first link and the entire chain of protection will unravel. The plan was meticulously crafted. A small, elite task force of chrono vessels, the most advanced temporal displacement craft ever conceived, would jump back through time to Viridia Prime's pre-industrial era. Their target, a single progenitor human, an individual identified through vast historical data analysis as a critical point in the human genetic line. No direct harm would be done. Instead, they would initiate a subtle, precise intervention. A slight alteration to environmental factors around the target, a microscopic shift in a planetary weather pattern, a harmless, non-lethal distraction that would prevent the specific meeting of two individuals critical to the target's eventual birth. The objective: a quiet, untraceable non-existence for the progenitor. No violent act, no direct aggression, just a carefully orchestrated non-event. The chrono vessels made their jump. Time rippled, space folded, and the small fleet materialized in the prehistoric skies of Viridia Prime. They located their target, a solitary human ancestor foraging near a primeval forest. Their instruments confirmed the critical juncture, the precise moment of intervention. Then, the universe screamed. It was not a sound, but a conceptual shattering. The Cygnian chronovessels, designed to navigate the currents of time, found themselves caught in an impossible temporal vortex. Their internal chronometers didn't just drift, they began to cycle rapidly, forward and backward, through millennia in seconds. Crew members aged and de-aged with horrifying speed. Memories flickered, then vanished, replaced by alien, impossible recollections of futures that never were. The paradox was immense. By attempting to prevent a human's birth, the Cygnian vessels had created a causal loop that threatened to unravel their own existence. If humanity's future selves were protecting their past, then any attempt to erase that past was an attempt to erase the protectors themselves. And the protectors, it seemed, had already anticipated such a move. Valerius, observing from his contemporary timeline, watched as his chrono-vessel fleet ceased to exist, not with an explosion, but with a silent, conceptual deletion. Their very historical record began to flicker. Ancient Signian texts on his data slates became illegible. Historical monuments, dating back thousands of cycles, began to fade from view in his own personal archives. It was as if the universe was actively expunging any trace of a species that dared to meddle with the human lineage. The grand strategist, usually unflappable, felt a cold dread bloom in his logical core. His species, which had mastered time, was being unmade by a force that transcended causality itself. It was not a counterattack, it was a cosmic correction. The Signian dominion, a proud, ancient civilization, was reduced to a few scattered outposts whose history had become an ambiguous, shifting tapestry of half-remembered events. They had tried to erase humanity's past, and instead, their own past had been redacted from existence. This final, terrifying failure sealed humanity's reputation. The warnings from the V-Lorax, the Grask, and the Xyler had been disturbing. But the fate of the Signian dominion was a chilling testament. Humanity's protection extended beyond space, beyond matter, beyond mind, and into the very fabric of time itself. It was a shield forged by their own future, a paradoxical reality anchor that made them untouchable. Yet some within the galaxy, witnessing these escalating consequences, found their fear curdling into a desperate conviction. Humanity was not merely protected, it was an existential threat in waiting. A species that could not be harmed, whose very existence caused reality to warp and species to unmake themselves, was an ultimate danger. They could not be allowed to enter the galactic stage to potentially wield such power, even unconsciously. A new coalition began to form, comprised of the most militaristic, the most paranoid, and the most ideologically rigid species in the galaxy. They called themselves the Purifiers. Their philosophy was simple, brutal, and utterly final. A threat that could not be contained must be eliminated. Their leader, the grim-visaged Marshal Xiphus of the Obsidian Hegemony, addressed his assembled commanders. His words, transmitted across encrypted channels to dozens of allied species, carried the weight of impending war. We have observed their protection. We have seen its strength. Individual contact results in individual dissolution. Small fleets result in material chaos. Mental intrusion results in conceptual fracturing. Temporal intervention results in historical erasure. Xiphus paused, his multifaceted eyes sweeping across the holographic projection of Viridia Prime. But what if the threat is not targeted? What if the strike is absolute? If the entire planet, the entire species, is erased from existence in a single, overwhelming, simultaneous act? The Purifier Coalition amassed a fleet unlike any seen in galactic history. Planet killers, reality shifters, singularity generators, every weapon of mass destruction that galactic science could conceive was brought to bear. Thousands of warships, bristling with impossible armaments, converged from every corner of the galaxy. Their target, a single verdant world. Their mission, total, immediate, and utterly irreversible destruction. Their hope, that by the sheer, overwhelming force of their collective might, they could bypass, or perhaps simply overwhelm, the paradoxical protection that enveloped humanity. The Purifier Armada, a terrible testament to galactic fear, prepared for the jump. Their synchronized FTL drives hummed with a raw, destructive power, ready to unleash a wave of annihilation upon Viridia Prime. The galaxy held its breath. Will the greatest armada ever assembled succeed where all others have perished, shattered, or been unmade? Or will humanity's impossible protection once again reveal a new, terrifying layer of its inscrutable defense? To discover the fate of the Purifier Coalition and the ultimate secret of humanity's shield, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part. After all, Who wouldn't want to know how the universe truly feels about humanity? The Purifier Armada, a terrible testament to galactic fear, prepared for the jump. Their synchronized FTL drives hummed with a raw, destructive power, ready to unleash a wave of annihilation upon Viridia Prime. The galaxy held its breath. Marshal Xiphus, a being of unyielding resolve, stood on the bridge of the Hegemony's might, the flagship of the Purifier Coalition. His multifaceted eyes, usually cold and calculating, gleamed with grim determination as Viridia Prime, the verdant anomaly, swelled on the main viewer. Thousands of warships, bristling with planet-destroying armaments, mirrored his ship's trajectory, forming an impenetrable sphere of destructive intent around the unsuspecting world. "All ships, prepare primary weapons systems." Xiphus's voice resonated through the fleet's comms, calm and steady. "Target, planetary core, firing sequence initiated in 3, 2, 1. The command was given. Across the vast, silent void, the Purifier fleet unleashed its fury. Antimatter projectors flared, singularity generators pulsed with dark energy, and reality-warping beams surged forth, aimed at the heart of the blue-green world. A wave of cosmic annihilation, designed to erase a planet from existence, surged across the interstellar expanse. But the wave never reached Viridia Prime. Instead, something utterly unprecedented, something that defied every known law of physics and logic, occurred. The vast torrent of destructive energy, the combined might of thousands of starfaring civilizations, did not continue its trajectory towards the planet. It transformed. The antimatter beams, designed to unravel the very fabric of existence, did not impact Viridia Prime. They curved gracefully and impossibly back towards the Purifier fleet, but they did not explode or annihilate. Instead, as they connected with the attacking vessels, they flowed over the hulls like liquid starlight, repairing every stress fracture, smoothing every weathered plate, and polishing every dulled surface. The ships, scarred by countless campaigns, suddenly gleamed with an impossible, pristine perfection. Scratches vanished. Hull breaches sealed themselves. Even ancient, long-dead energy conduits within the vessels hummed back to life, filling them with a gentle, non-destructive warmth. The singularity generators, built to collapse stars into cosmic maw, did not fire at the planet. Their dark energy pulsed, not outwards but inwards, into the very core of the attacking ships. And as it did, the chaotic, destructive intent that fueled the Purifier vessels began to reorder itself. Weapons bays, designed to launch devastating payloads, rearranged their internal mechanisms, transforming into intricate, self-sustaining hydroponic gardens, bursting with alien flora that glowed with soft, nurturing light. Targeting computers, once locked onto death, displayed complex algorithms for optimal atmospheric cleansing and interstellar ecological restoration. Marshal Xiphus watched in horror as the Hegemony's might itself began to change. The grim, obsidian plating of his bridge began to swirl with luminous, organic patterns, shifting through all the colors of a vibrant nebula. His personal terminal, a conduit for strategic commands, flickered, then began displaying detailed schematics for advanced, universal nutrient synthesis and interstellar humanitarian aid routes. The very purpose of his warship, of his fleet, was being rewritten. Panic erupted across the Purifier comms. "My weapons, they are growing flowers," shrieked a subordinate commander, his voice thick with disbelief. "Our planet killer just made a star bloom," another reported. "The Singularity Core, it's producing clean energy for 1 billion worlds." We're a power plant." The reality-warping weapons, the most feared armaments in the galaxy, did not tear Viridia Prime asunder. Instead, they affected the Purifier crews. Soldiers, once consumed by zeal and battle-hardened resolve, suddenly found themselves overcome with an inexplicable surge of empathy. Their rigid, militaristic minds were flooded with visions of harmonious coexistence, of diverse species sharing knowledge and resources, of a galactic peace so profound it brought tears to their eyes. Their will to fight, their very reason for being there, evaporated. Many simply collapsed onto their decks, weeping openly, not from sorrow, but from an overwhelming, unfamiliar sense of universal connection. Marshal Xiphus felt it too. The cold, logical core of his strategic mind began to melt under a wave of inexplicable, profound tranquility. Visions of ancient Cygnian cities, long forgotten in the pursuit of power, filled his consciousness. He saw himself, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian of wisdom, dedicated to the preservation of beauty and life. The very idea of destruction, of violence, felt alien, repugnant, a crude and horrifying relic of a distant, ignorant past. His fleet, the largest and most destructive force ever assembled, was not defeated by force. It was pacified. Its instruments of war had been transformed into instruments of life. Its destructive intent had been inverted into a profound, universal benevolence. The Purifier Coalition had not been vanquished, it had been repurposed. Within minutes, the thousands of warships that had arrived to annihilate a world were no longer a threat. They drifted peacefully, their newly bloomed hydroponics glowing softly, their crew members in states of peaceful, often tearful, contemplation. The hegemony's might, once a symbol of domination, floated serenely, its bridge transformed into a living, vibrant garden, its main view screen now displaying an endless, serene vista of a blossoming, harmonious galaxy. Marshal Xiphus, now a shadow of his former self, sat amidst the alien flora that had sprouted from his command console. The iron will that had driven him for centuries had evaporated, replaced by a profound, almost childlike wonder at the universe's interconnectedness. He had wanted to purge an anomaly, and instead, the anomaly had purged him of his destructive intent. Far away, Commander Xylos of the V-Lorax observation vessel, the Axiom, monitored the event. His sensors, now functioning with perfect, albeit terrified, clarity, recorded every impossible transformation. He watched as the Purifier fleet, his former adversaries, became a fleet of cosmic gardeners, their purpose fundamentally rewritten. "It's not just a shield," Xylos whispered, his voice synthesizer trembling. "It's a recalibration. The protection doesn't just stop harm, it redefines the intent of the aggressor. It turns destructive will into constructive purpose." The news spread through the galaxy like a spiritual awakening. The Purifier Coalition, the ultimate expression of galactic fear and aggression, had not been defeated by force, but by profound, inexplicable peace. The survivors, now utterly harmless, willingly disarmed themselves, their ships converted into interstellar sanctuaries and ecological research vessels. They became the ultimate, living testament to humanity's impossible protection, a force that could alter the very intent of a sentient being. The Galactic Council, now humbled beyond measure, issued an unprecedented decree. Viridia Prime, now designated Terra by the newly formed Guardians of Benevolence, formerly the Purifiers, was not merely quarantined. It was declared a sacred, untouchable domain, a living paradox that redefined galactic philosophy. Any vessel approaching Terra would be met with overwhelming force, not to harm, but to redirect, to re-educate. The penalty for hostile intent was no longer expulsion or destruction. It was a conceptual reintegration into the fabric of universal harmony. For centuries, the galaxy watched. Humanity, utterly unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding around their world, continued its inexorable march towards the stars. They developed fusion power, colonized their moon, and sent automated probes to their nearest stellar neighbors. Their history, a tumultuous blend of conflict and cooperation, was entirely their own. The protection, invisible and inscrutable, continued its silent watch. It responded only when non-human threats, however misguided or accidental, manifested. Then the inevitable happened. After generations of striving, humanity achieved faster than light travel. Their first FTL vessel, the UES Odyssey, breached the light barrier and emerged into the vast, waiting unknown. On its bridge, Captain Alara Vance, a brilliant strategist with a keen sense of wonder, stared at the unfolding stars. She had no idea what awaited them, no inkling of the reputation her species carried throughout the cosmos. Their first contact came not with a formal embassy or an exploratory probe, but with a V-Lorax vessel, a custodian-class scout ship that materialized directly in their path. Its single, multifaceted optical sensor focused intently on the Odyssey. Captain Vance ordered evasive maneuvers, preparing for the worst, but the V-Lorax ship merely sent a single, simple message, translated instantly by the Odyssey's universal translator. "Welcome, humans of Terra. We have been waiting. Please do not be alarmed. There are protocols to discuss. Many, many protocols." Captain Vance, her brow furrowed in confusion, responded, "Waiting. Protocols, who are you?" The V-Lorax vessel initiated a slow, deliberate approach, its comms open. "I am Commander Xylos, and I believe we have much to explain. Your arrival was anticipated and feared, and by some worshipped." The revelation, delivered by Commander Xylos over the next several cycles, shattered humanity's perception of itself. He spoke of the Skitter Hunters and the Sky Serpent, the Axiom's unraveling, the Grask's material corruption, the Xyler's psychic fragmentation, the Cygnian's historical erasure, and finally, the astonishing transformation of the Purifier Coalition. He explained how every attempt to harm them, even conceptually, had been met with an impossible, disproportionate response that inverted the very nature of the threat. The human crew listened in stunned silence. Their history, their very existence, was apparently intertwined with cosmic forces they had never known. Dr. Aris Thorne, the Odyssey's chief xenolinguist, voiced the collective disbelief. "But that's impossible. We've fought wars, suffered plagues, endured natural disasters. We perish all the time." Xylos nodded, his optical sensor dimming slightly. "The protection only activates when non-humans attempt to harm you. It does not prevent you from harming each other or from suffering natural causality. It is highly specific." Captain Vance felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. So, all those species, they were destroyed or unmade or turned into something else because of us, because they tried to attack us. "Not because of anything you did consciously," Xylos clarified. "They were victims of their own intent. The protection is not a weapon of yours, but a fundamental principle of the universe when applied to your species. It simply enforces the rule. No harm shall come to them." The implications were staggering. Humanity, the young, striving species, was unknowingly at the center of a cosmic mystery that had reshaped galactic politics and scientific understanding. They were not just a new species. They were a living, breathing paradox, capable of shattering reality simply by being targeted. The crisis escalated dramatically when the Odyssey engaged in a joint research project with a species of highly advanced, crystalline beings known as the Lumina. They were studying a newly discovered energy phenomenon near a nebula. During a critical phase, a sudden, unexpected energy surge from the nebula threatened to overload the Lumina's primary research vessel, potentially causing an explosion that would have affected the Odyssey. In a split-second decision, a Lumina engineer instinctively diverted the overload, directing the raw energy away from their own ship and, unknowingly, straight towards a human crew member on the Odyssey's adjacent deck. The human, technician Jax Kale, shielded his eyes, feeling the heat wash over him, but he was unharmed. The Odyssey's internal systems, designed to handle such surges, absorbed the energy without issue. But the Lumina's vessel across the void suddenly began to shimmer. Its intricate crystalline structure, which had withstood the forces of dying stars, started to disassemble itself. not with destruction, but with a deliberate, agonizingly slow process of molecular deconstruction, each perfect crystal dissolving into a cascade of light, then nothingness. The Lumina engineers shrieked, their collective consciousness broadcasting pure terror. Their entire species was based on the collective integrity of their crystalline forms. Now they were systematically unmaking themselves, atom by atom, not exploding, but simply ceasing to be. They had not intended harm, only to save themselves. Yet the protection had interpreted even this accidental, indirect threat as a violation. Commander Xylos, his voice filled with a desperate urgency, explained the horrifying pattern to Captain Vance. The protection does not distinguish intent. It only recognizes threat. Any action by a non-human that results in, or could result in, harm to a human activates it. Your very presence, even by accident, is causing their existence to unravel. Captain Vance felt a chill colder than space itself. Her species was not a threat because of their strength, but because of their weakness. The galaxy was not afraid of what humans could do, but what happened to others around them. They were an unwitting existential anchor, demanding perfect safety from a chaotic universe. The leader of the Lumina, their prime architect, a being of pure light, sent a final desperate message before its consciousness began to scatter. Please, we do not wish this, make it stop. Your existence, it unweaves us. Captain Vance, facing a horror beyond comprehension, made a decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We need to contact whatever it is that's doing this, she declared, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. We need to tell them to stop. We cannot exist like this, watching the galaxy unmake itself around us. The attempt to communicate with humanity's temporal protectors took months of desperate, collaborative effort between human and alien scientists, led by Captain Vance and Commander Xylos. They constructed a theoretical communication array, one designed not to transmit signals through space, but through the very fabric of causality. The message, simple and direct, was broadcast into the temporal anomaly that surrounded humanity. We do not want this protection. Please stop. The response came not as words, but as a direct, undeniable, perfect understanding implanted in the minds of every human alive. They suddenly grasped the truth of their protection, its origin, its purpose, and the profound choice that now lay before them. Humanity's descendants, existing in a future millions of years away, had indeed been safeguarding their past selves, foreseeing that without such intervention, early humanity would have perished before ever reaching their true potential. The protection had always been temporary, a shield until humanity was ready to stand on its own. That time, the message conveyed, had now arrived. The future humans presented two paths. They could maintain the protection, and their past selves would live as isolated, revered, yet feared cosmic entities, never truly connecting with other species. Or the protection could be withdrawn, allowing humanity to face the galaxy as equals, with all the risks, joys, and perils that true equality entailed. The choice, the temporal message concluded, was now theirs. The galaxy waited, holding its collective breath, as humanity, armed with a terrifying truth, pondered a choice that would decide not just their own destiny, but the very nature of galactic civilization itself. Will humanity choose the path of eternal, terrifying safety, isolating themselves in a gilded cage of cosmic protection? Or will they embrace the perilous, uncertain freedom of a galaxy where harm is possible, but so is true connection? To witness humanity's monumental decision and the dawn of a new galactic era, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss the final part of this incredible journey, where humanity's fate, and perhaps the universe's, hangs in the balance. The galaxy waited, holding its collective breath, as humanity, armed with a terrifying truth, pondered a choice that would decide not just their own destiny, but the very nature of galactic civilization itself. The temporal message, A direct infusion of knowledge into every human mind had revealed the cosmic secret of their existence. A protective shield woven by their own distant descendants, a shield designed to ensure their survival in a perilous cosmos until they were ready to stand on their own. Now, the time had come for that choice. A profound silence fell across Terra, then across every human colony and vessel. It was a silence born of shock, then disbelief, then a growing, agonizing realization. Humanity was not just a species, they were a living paradox, unknowingly protected by an inscrutable, overwhelming force. The stories Commander Xylos had relayed, the fates of the V-Lorax, the Grask, the Xyler, the Signian, and the Purifiers, all became horrifyingly real. They saw the agony of the Lumina unmade by an accidental ripple of the shield. They understood the cosmic scale of their unintentional power. Captain Alara Vance, now revered as humanity's voice to the stars, stood before the newly convened Global Council on Terra. Her face was etched with the weight of the universe. "We have received the message," she stated, her voice quiet but resonant. "Our descendants offer us a choice. Continue the protection or end it." The debate that followed was unlike any in human history. It raged across continents, across star systems, in every language and every mind. Fear clashed with ambition, caution with courage. "We must maintain the shield," argued Administrator Kenji Sato, his voice trembling with a raw, desperate logic. "Think of the safety. No more wars, no more threats from external powers. We could explore the galaxy in peace, build without fear, dedicate ourselves to science and art without the constant shadow of annihilation." Dr. Aris Thorne, usually the voice of scientific reason, found himself caught in the philosophical whirlwind. "But at what cost, Kenji? We would be gods in a gilded cage, feared, worshipped, perhaps, but never truly equal. Every interaction would be tainted by the knowledge that our very presence could unmake another species by accident. What kind of existence is that?" A chorus of voices rose from the crowd, transmitted through holographic projectors across the globe. "We've always faced our challenges," shouted a veteran pilot from a Martian colony. "We've overcome plagues, famines, wars amongst ourselves. That's who we are. That's how we grow." "But this is different," retorted a representative from the Venusian orbital platforms. "This isn't about self-improvement. This is about galactic-level existential threats. If we turn it off, we open ourselves up to destruction from forces we can't even comprehend." The most poignant arguments came from those who had witnessed the impact of the shield firsthand. Technicians who had seen the Lumina dissolve, explorers who had observed the transformed Purifier fleet. They spoke of the chilling responsibility, the profound loneliness of being utterly untouchable. Captain Vance listened, her heart aching with the enormity of the decision. She thought of Commander Xylos, a being of logic and caution who had seen the universe unravel around her species. She thought of the fear in the galaxy's eyes, the impossible respect. She thought of the Lumina, unmade not by malice, but by their own accidental preservation. A quiet voice, that of an ancient historian, Professor Mei Lin, cut through the clamor. "Our history, fraught with struggle as it is, has always been defined by our capacity to overcome adversity. To choose a path where adversity cannot touch us from outside is to choose a path where we can never truly forge bonds of mutual respect. It is to choose isolation, however gilded. It is to choose not to be human in the truest sense of the word." Her words resonated deeply. Humanity had always prided itself on its resilience, its ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. They were the species that built cities on ocean floors, tamed harsh environments, and reached for the stars despite their fragility. To forsake that, to become eternal infants in a cosmic playpen, felt fundamentally wrong. After days of intense, soul-searching debate, a consensus began to form. It was not born of recklessness, but of a deep, collective understanding of their own spirit. Captain Vance stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her people, then upwards, as if addressing the silent, watching future. We have always faced our challenges head-on. We have fallen and we have risen. We have made mistakes and we have learned. We have found strength not in invulnerability, but in vulnerability in our capacity to feel, to suffer, and to overcome. To accept this protection at the cost of genuine connection with the galaxy is to deny who we are. A wave of affirmation rippled through the global gathering. Not all agreed, but the vast majority found themselves nodding, a quiet determination settling into their hearts. "We choose freedom," Captain Vance declared, her voice now ringing with conviction. "We choose to face the galaxy as equals. We choose to accept the risks and the opportunities of true interaction. We ask our descendants to release us." The message, clear and unwavering, was then broadcast into the temporal anomaly, back through time to their future selves. We choose equality. We choose risk. We choose to stand on our own, end the protection. The response was immediate and utterly profound. It was not a sudden jolt, nor a blinding flash. Instead, it was a sensation of an immense, invisible weight being gently lifted from the universe. Every human felt it, a profound loosening, a subtle shift in the very fabric of reality around them. The paradox that had defined their existence for millennia simply resolved. Across the galaxy, the reaction was equally dramatic. On board the Axiom, Commander Xylos watched his instruments. The chaotic energy signatures that had always surrounded Terra, the impossible readings, the temporal distortions they smoothed out, vanished, leaving behind only the predictable hum of a stable, carbon-based world. The V-Lorax, who had lived with the existential terror of humanity for centuries, felt a sudden, profound calm. Their logical processors, long strained by the cosmic anomaly, found a newfound clarity. The Grask, still scarred by the material unraveling of their fleet, felt the lingering instability in their ships' hulls subside. The materials became reliably solid once more, no longer shifting and flowing with impossible wrongness. The Xylar, whose collective minds had been fractured, felt a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. The disjointed fragments of their individual consciousnesses, isolated for so long, found themselves subtly, gently, beginning to reach out again, tentatively, seeking connection. The path to rebuilding their shattered society, once impossible, now seemed, however faintly, within reach. Even the remnants of the Cygnian dominion, whose history had been redacted, felt a subtle return of their past. Ambiguous historical texts gained a measure of clarity. Fading monuments shimmered, their outlines solidifying. The universe, it seemed, was letting go of the erasure, allowing their fractured past to return, albeit with a haunting reminder of their temporal hubris. And the purifiers, now the guardians of benevolence, who had found their destructive intent inverted into cosmic empathy, felt a deep, abiding joy. Their ships, once instruments of war, continued to function as interstellar gardens and sanctuaries. But now the benevolence was their own choice, not an imposed state. They wept, not from cosmic sorrow, but from a newfound sense of shared free purpose. A new message, this time a clear, universal transmission, echoed through every galactic comms channel, translated perfectly into every species' language. It was not from humanity. It was from the now transformed galactic community, spearheaded by a newly confident Commander Xylos and the grateful prime architect of the recovering Lumina. To all species of the galaxy, the temporal protection surrounding humanity, formerly designated Terra, has been withdrawn. They have chosen to face the cosmos as equals. The paradox has resolved. The risk is now their own. And so, the path to true interstellar coexistence, once blocked, is now open. The galaxy's reaction was a mix of awe, relief, and profound, unprecedented respect. The fear, the mystery, the terror of the untouchable anomaly, it had all dissolved. In its place was a burgeoning understanding of a species that had willingly laid down the ultimate shield. choosing vulnerability and shared destiny over an isolating, terrifying invincibility. Humanity, now truly alone in the universe, but for their own courage, began their journey outward. They encountered the V-Lorax, not as feared untouchables, but as fellow seekers of knowledge, their past interactions replaced by a shared understanding born of mutual respect. They met the Grask, and surprisingly found common ground in resource management, their shared history of unintended consequence leading to cautious, but genuine, cooperation. They extended a helping hand to the recovering Xyler, offering what little they knew of individuality, helping them to heal the psychic wounds of forced isolation. Their story was no longer one of a protected species, but of a species that chose to be unprotected. They brought with them no cosmic shield, but an indomitable spirit, a capacity for empathy, and a history of overcoming challenges through their own efforts. They were not without problems. Internal conflicts still arose, and the vast, unknown universe still held perils. But they faced them as they always had, together as humans. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were off limits not because they were invincible, but because they had chosen to be vulnerable. No harm shall come to them, not by cosmic decree, but by galactic choice. For in their audacious decision to shed the mantle of impossible protection, humanity had not just secured their place among the stars. They had fundamentally reshaped the very concept of power, vulnerability, and coexistence for all time. The stars awaited, vast and unpredictable, and humanity, finally free, was ready to meet them, one challenge, one handshake, one shared journey at a time. The true human era had just begun. If you were moved by humanity's incredible choice in this grand finale, give this video a powerful like. What was your favorite moment in this entire series, from the first mysterious incidents to humanity's final, brave decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more epic HFY stories that celebrate the indomitable spirit of humanity.